was, you know what I mean? And she was there 1 minute and the next she wasn't. So they searched and tore our house apart 11 times. I don't know. It really hurt. The whole thing has really hurt me and kind of a lot, but we're still hanging in there for our kids and trying to do what's right. And holding out hope that someone will be found.
At exactly 4:30 p.m., law enforcement moved in. The timing wasn't random. It was precise, deliberate, coordinated down to the minute. At 4:30 p.m., when most people in Hawkins County were settling into their routines, coming home from work, starting dinner, or simply enjoying the quiet of a late afternoon, something entirely different was unfolding on the edge of town. A quiet warehouse, hidden on the edge of Hawkins County, suddenly became the center of a shocking development. This wasn't just any warehouse. For months, maybe even years, it had stood in plain sight, blending into the backdrop of industrial lots, dirt roads, and tree lines. To anyone passing by, it looked like nothing more than a storage facility, one of those anonymous structures people drive past without giving it a second thought. But at 4:30 p.m., that changed forever. Unmarked SUVs rolled in first, their tinted windows hiding the faces inside. Then came the cruisers, the flashing lights muted until the last second to avoid drawing attention too soon. Witnesses described the scene as sudden, almost startling. One moment the road was empty, the next it was filled with law enforcement. Officers moved quickly but methodically, their presence calculated and serious. Neighbors noticed the detail: tactical gear, heavy vests, radios clipped to their shoulders. The kind of preparation that meant this wasn't just a casual check-in, it was a full operation. Law enforcement doesn't arrive like that unless they're expecting to find something. Unless they've been waiting for this exact moment. For a long time, the Summerwells case has been shrouded in mystery. Since June 15, 2021, when 5-year-old Summer vanished from her family's home in Rogersville, Tennessee, countless searches, tips, and leads have come and gone. Each time, the community hoped for closure, only to face another dead end. But on this day, as the clock struck 4:30, something shifted. The atmosphere was different. Inside the warehouse, officers and agents from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation spread out, their flashlights cutting through the dim light. The silence of the building was broken only by the shuffle of boots and the low hum of radio chatter. They weren't just looking, they were collecting. Methodically, carefully, as if every corner of the warehouse held the possibility of unlocking the truth. And outside, people watched. Neighbors, drivers passing by, and even those who heard whispers through social media began to gather, their eyes fixed on the scene. A quiet warehouse had transformed into the epicenter of speculation. Why here? Why now? They asked. For hours, law enforcement worked inside. Evidence bags appeared first, small, sealed, carried carefully by gloved hands. Then came boxes, larger containers, each one treated with the same precision. Officers loaded them into waiting vehicles, ensuring nothing was exposed to wandering eyes. To the untrained observer, it might have looked routine. But to anyone following the Summerwells case, the meaning was clear. This wasn't routine. This was significant. The fact that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation confirmed their involvement only amplified the tension. The TBI doesn't lend its resources lightly. Their presence meant credibility, weight, and seriousness. When they said, significant items of interest have been recovered, it was a deliberate choice of words. They didn't say, possible. They didn't say, unrelated. They said, significant. And in a case where every clue has been picked apart for over 4 years, that word carries power. Back at the warehouse, the 4:30 raid stretched on. Vehicles came and went. Officers rotated, but the work never paused. Some witnesses described officers photographing sections of the warehouse, documenting every angle. Others recalled the silence that fell each time another sealed bag was carried out, an unspoken understanding that whatever was inside mattered. The location itself raised even more questions. Why this warehouse? How long had investigators been watching it? Was it connected to someone already known in the case? Or was this a completely new lead? Those answers weren't immediately clear, but the raid suggested something investigators had waited patiently to confirm. The exact timing, 4:30 p.m., hasn't gone unnoticed either. Law enforcement often executes raids at moments when they know a target is vulnerable, when the environment can be controlled. The precision of the operation suggested planning, intelligence, and most importantly, purpose. For a community that has lived with uncertainty for years, the image of that warehouse is unforgettable. People who drove by that day recall the flashing lights reflecting off the metal siding, the way officers formed a perimeter, the hushed tones between neighbors as word spread. This has to be about Summer. Speculation has run wild since then. Some believe the evidence recovered may be the long-awaited breakthrough, a direct link to what happened to Summer Wells. Others remain cautious, remembering the many times before when hopes were raised, only to be dashed. But the truth is undeniable, law enforcement does not mobilize on this scale without reason. Something inside that warehouse mattered. Something enough to stop time at exactly 4:30 p.m. and make a forgotten building the center of national attention. As dusk fell, the raid began to wind down. The once quiet warehouse, now the focus of cameras and whispers, stood in stark contrast to the ordinary day that had started just hours earlier. Vehicles pulled away one by one, carrying sealed containers that could hold the answers everyone has been waiting for. But as night came, the questions only grew louder. What was inside those bags? Who led investigators here? And most haunting of all, does this mean the truth about Summer Wells is finally within reach? What happened at 4:30 p.m. wasn't just a raid. It was a moment, a turning point, a signal to the world that the case isn't cold, that the fight for justice continues, and that after years of silence, the walls of secrecy may finally be cracking open. And so, the line echoes with even greater weight now. At exactly 4:30 p.m., law enforcement moved in. A quiet warehouse, hidden on the edge of Hawkins County, suddenly became the center of a shocking development. Because for the first time in years, it feels like the truth might not be as far away as it once seemed. The doors swung open, heavy and echoing against the still evening air. For a moment, the warehouse sat in silence, a dark and unassuming shell on the edge of Hawkins County. But inside, everything changed. Teams of officers stepped through, their flashlights cutting through the dim interior, moving quickly and deliberately toward something hidden within. And what they found may very well alter the course of this case forever. Sealed containers, boxes carefully lifted and handled with precision, evidence bags passed from one set of gloved hands to another, each step documented, each piece treated as if it could hold the missing link investigators have waited 4 long years to find. The atmosphere was tense, electric. Officers spoke in hushed tones, their movements careful, methodical. They knew the weight of the moment. They knew the eyes of a community and a nation would soon be fixed on whatever it was they were uncovering. And tonight, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has confirmed what many feared and what others hoped would one day come to light. There is shocking new evidence. Evidence they are calling significant. Evidence they believe could finally bring them closer to answering the question that has haunted Tennessee and the entire true crime community since June 15, 2021. What really happened to Summer Wells? Sources now confirm that a coordinated police raid was carried out at a warehouse tied directly to ongoing tips in the Summer Wells investigation. This wasn't just another knock on a door or a quick follow-up on a lead that might fizzle out. According to those close to the investigation, this raid had been in the works for days, possibly weeks. Detectives don't move in like this unless they're confident. Every vehicle, every officer, every sealed bag leaving that warehouse represented hours of planning, surveillance, and quiet strategy behind the scenes. The location itself only added to the intensity. The warehouse, quiet, tucked away on the edge of Hawkins County, wasn't the type of place you'd expect to see such heavy police activity. Locals said they rarely saw much movement there at all. So when the flashing lights appeared and officers in tactical gear began pouring inside, it was clear something important was unfolding. Speculation erupted instantly. Word spread from neighbor to neighbor, then across social media within minutes. What exactly had been found inside? Was it physical evidence? Something belonging to Summer herself? Or documents, electronics, and items that could tie a person directly to her disappearance? Witnesses at the scene described the air as tense. Some said it felt like time slowed down as officers methodically entered the building, one after another, until the entire structure seemed swallowed by law enforcement. Outside, agents stood guard, ensuring no one could get too close. Inside, the real work was happening, the search for the truth. Hours passed before investigators began emerging again. They weren't empty-handed. One by one, boxes, sealed containers, and evidence bags were carried out. Each was carefully loaded into unmarked vehicles, their contents shielded from view. And yet, even without knowing what was inside, the sight alone was enough to send shockwaves through the community. Because in the Summerwells case, the word evidence carries weight. For more than 4 years, every lead has been scrutinized, tested, and often discarded. Families have held on to hope while watching countless tips collapse into dead ends. But this time, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation itself confirmed that significant items of interest had been recovered. And that word, significant, sparked a firestorm of questions. Investigators are usually careful, even cautious, with their wording. They know how quickly speculation can spiral. They don't call something significant unless they mean it. So what exactly does that mean here? Could it be a personal belonging, something unmistakably tied to Summer? Could it be forensic material, a trace of evidence that finally connects the dots? Or is it the kind of breakthrough that points investigators directly toward a suspect? For many watching, this raid feels different. It feels like a turning point. The secrecy, the scale, the timing, it all suggests that the investigation may be closer to answers than ever before. Still, others are cautious. They remember the countless times hope has surged, only to be met with silence. They know how painful false alarms can be for a family already enduring unimaginable loss. But make no mistake, this was not a casual search. This was a targeted strike, built on something investigators believed was worth pursuing. And the evidence they carried out could very well be the beginning of the end of a mystery that has gripped the nation since June 15, 2021. That's the day Summer vanished from her family's home in Rogersville, Tennessee. It was June 15, 2021, a hot summer day like any other. Rogersville was quiet, the kind of town where life moves slow and the mountains swallow sound. But on Ben Hill Road, that calm was shattered forever. Summer Wells, a bright-eyed 5-year-old girl, had been playing outside with her brothers. In the middle of that ordinary afternoon, she disappeared. No sound of a car, no sign of a struggle, just gone in the blink of an eye. Her mother, Candace, called 911 around 6:30 p.m. The call triggered an immediate response. Local deputies were first on scene, but within hours the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and even the FBI had descended on Rogersville. A massive search was launched. By nightfall, floodlights illuminated the dense brush surrounding the Wells home. Search dogs picked up faint scents, but the trail went cold almost immediately. The next morning, helicopters circled overhead. Boats probed nearby waterways. Volunteers formed human chains, walking shoulder to shoulder through thick woods and fields. The terrain scoured. It wasn't easy terrain, it was Appalachian wilderness. Thick undergrowth, steep ravines, abandoned barns and sheds. Investigators cut through brambles, crawled into crawl spaces, and pried open locked doors, desperate for any sign. Wells, ponds, and creeks were drained and searched. The ground was unforgiving, muddy, and at times nearly impassable. But still, the search pressed on. Hundreds of tips came in. Some were local, from neighbors who thought they saw something unusual. Others came from hundreds of miles away, strangers who swore they recognized Summer in gas stations, restaurants, even parking lots. But every lead, no matter how promising, ended in the same way. Nothing. And yet, nothing. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The reward fund grew into the hundreds of thousands. The Wells family appeared on camera, begging for answers. The community clung to hope. And yet, through all of it, the most haunting reality remained. Summer was still missing. Years passed. The official investigation quieted. Updates from the TBI became sparse, sometimes just a single line reminding the public that the case was still open. For many, hope was fading. But now, with this raid at exactly 4:30 p.m., the TBI confirmed, significant items of interest have been recovered. That moment, 4:30 p.m., changed everything. On that afternoon, heavily armed officers converged on a warehouse tied to ongoing tips. The location had been watched, monitored, and carefully assessed before the raid. This was no random sweep. It was targeted, deliberate, and executed with precision. The doors to the warehouse were forced open. Inside, investigators methodically searched every inch. Hours later, they emerged, evidence bags in hand, sealed tight, guarded closely. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation made a rare public statement, confirming that significant items of interest have been recovered. Those words, carefully chosen, sent shockwaves through the case. Because the TBI doesn't use language like that unless it matters. For years, they've been cautious, guarded, rarely revealing details. But now, they were telling the world, something important had been found. Instantly, speculation erupted. What exactly was inside those bags? Clothing? Personal belongings? Forensic traces that could be tested in a lab? Could it be connected directly to Summer herself? Or was it tied to a person of interest investigators had quietly been watching? Neighbors whispered. Online communities dissected every frame of the raid footage. Reporters scrambled for details. And for the first time in years, the case felt alive again, like answers could finally be within reach. For many, that word, significant, sparked hope. Hope that justice was coming. Hope that the truth, long buried in mystery, was finally about to surface. But for others, it brought a deep, sinking fear. Fear of what the evidence might reveal. Fear that the answers would be darker, heavier, and more heartbreaking than anyone dared to imagine. Neighbors described unmarked vehicles and tactical officers swarming the building. It started quietly, just after 4:30 p.m. At first, it was only a couple of vehicles pulling up near the edge of the road. But within minutes, the quiet stretch of Hawkins County transformed into something straight out of a crime drama. Witnesses said SUVs and pickup trucks with tinted windows seemed to appear from every direction, parking strategically to cut off any chance of escape from the warehouse. To the untrained eye, the vehicles looked ordinary. No flashing lights, no loud sirens. But those who knew better instantly recognized the formation. This was law enforcement moving with precision. Neighbors who had been outside gardening or walking their dogs said they froze when they saw men in tactical gear begin filing out of the vehicles. Helmets, bulletproof vests, radios pressed to their shoulders, the kind of presence you never expect to see in your own neighborhood. Some residents described the sudden swarm as chilling. One woman, who asked not to be identified, said, "I've lived here 20 years. I've never seen that many officers in one place, especially not with that kind of urgency. They weren't here to ask questions. They were here for something big." Others recounted how the team spread out with speed and silence, covering every angle of the warehouse as if they had rehearsed it. 2 officers moved toward the rear entrance while another group secured the front. Within seconds, the entire property was under control. Neighbors said they could see red laser dots sweep across the exterior doors, the unmistakable sign of rifles locked and ready. The air itself seemed to shift. Some witnesses described an eerie calm, broken only by the sound of heavy boots striking the gravel. The presence of tactical officers meant one thing. This wasn't a casual search. Authorities were expecting resistance, or they believed that what was inside that warehouse was simply too important to risk losing. They spent hours inside before leaving with sealed containers. Once the building was secure, a different wave of officials arrived: detectives, forensic specialists, and crime scene technicians. They carried cases marked with evidence seals, portable lights, and large protective bins. Their movements were slower, more methodical, as if every step was part of a carefully written plan. Neighbors reported that during the raid, the doors of the warehouse remained tightly shut. But through narrow windows, a faint glow of artificial light flickered as investigators worked. From the outside, witnesses could see shadows moving back and forth, silhouettes of officers photographing, searching, and documenting. Some neighbors said they heard faint metallic sounds, like drawers being pulled open or large objects being shifted. The hours ticked by. Cars slowed as they passed the scene, their drivers craning their necks for a glimpse of what was happening. Rumors spread in real time across social media. Was this about drugs? Guns? Or was it directly connected to the disappearance of Summer Wells? Finally, as dusk settled over Hawkins County, movement erupted once again. Officers began carrying items out of the warehouse, some small, some surprisingly large. Every single object was sealed, wrapped, or locked inside evidence containers. Neighbors described seeing black bins being wheeled to waiting trucks, along with large cardboard boxes taped shut with official seals. The containers were loaded with extreme care, one after the other, into unmarked vehicles that were immediately driven away under escort. To onlookers, it was impossible to tell what those containers held. But one thing was undeniable. Whatever had been removed was considered crucial. They weren't carrying out junk, one neighbor said. Every single thing they touched looked like it mattered. And the way they guarded those boxes, you could just tell. The operation ended as suddenly as it had begun. By the time the last vehicle rolled away, the once quiet street was left in silence again. Only faint tire marks in the gravel hinted that something extraordinary had taken place. For the neighbors who stood watching, the image of sealed containers disappearing into the night left them with one haunting question. Had they just witnessed the moment the Summer Wells case finally turned a corner? Some believe this moment could finally be the long-awaited breakthrough, the one investigators have been chasing for more than 4 years. To them, the raid signals progress, a turning point, a sign that the silence surrounding Summer's disappearance may finally be cracking. But others remain deeply cautious. They warn that over the years, countless leads have surfaced with the same promise, only to crumble under scrutiny and fade into dead ends. They've seen the community's hopes raised before, only to be crushed. And yet, this feels different. Because one thing is absolutely clear. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation does not use the word significant lightly. In official statements, language is chosen carefully, every word weighed for meaning. For them to stand before the public and confirm that significant items of interest were indeed recovered means those items are not ordinary. It means that whatever was found inside that warehouse has the potential to reshape the course of this case. It means the discovery matters in a way previous evidence never did. What exactly was hidden inside that warehouse? That's the question echoing through Hawkins County tonight and across the country as people follow every development in the Summer Wells investigation. A warehouse, silent, tucked away on the edge of town, suddenly became the most important place in Tennessee. But what could have been concealed there for so long, undetected, until now? Was it something physical, clothing, belongings, DNA evidence? Or was it something more chilling, something investigators had long feared might eventually surface? And who led investigators there? Tips have poured in by the hundreds since June of 2021. Some led nowhere, some were dismissed instantly, and some were quietly investigated behind the scenes. But for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and Hawkins County deputies to converge at exactly 4:30 p.m., moving with precision and purpose, it means someone, somewhere, gave them a reason to believe this location held answers. Was it a confidential informant? A witness who had stayed silent all these years? Or perhaps digital evidence, uncovered through phones, computers, or online activity, that finally traced back to this building? Speculation now swirls. Neighbors report unmarked vehicles arriving with tactical teams, men in dark gear moving with urgency, investigators carrying equipment not just for searching but for securing evidence. They spent hours inside, combing through every corner before leaving with sealed containers, boxes shielded from view, the kind that only come out when something critical has been recovered. For the community, these questions weigh heavy. If the raid was triggered by a tip, why now? Why, after so many years of silence, would someone finally speak? And more importantly, what risk did they take to bring this information forward? Because in cases like this, breakthroughs rarely come without a cost. What exactly was hidden inside that warehouse? And who led investigators there? The answers to those two questions could unlock the truth about what happened to Summer Wells. And does this mean someone has finally been caught hiding the truth? That's the question gripping not only Rogersville, Tennessee, but thousands of people following the Summerwells case around the world. For over 3 years, this little girl's disappearance has been surrounded by silence, rumors, theories, and countless false leads. Every tip seemed to end the same way. Another dead end, another door closed. But with this raid, something feels different. For the first time in years, there is a sense that the silence may finally be breaking. Neighbors described the sudden intensity of the moment, the way unmarked cars rolled up, the way tactical officers positioned themselves at every exit, the way the doors of that quiet warehouse were forced open with determination. This was not a casual search. This was a coordinated strike. Inside, agents spent hours combing through the space. Lights swept across boxes, tools, corners, every possible hiding place. And when they emerged, it was not empty-handed. Containers were sealed and carefully carried out, shielded from public view, as if to guard secrets too powerful to be seen just yet. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation later released a rare statement, confirming what many had suspected but few dared to say aloud. Significant items of interest have been recovered. Those words, significant items of interest, are not used lightly. In the careful language of investigators, they mean something that cannot be ignored. Something that could finally move the case forward. And so the question now hangs heavier than ever. Does this mean someone has finally been caught hiding the truth? For years, whispers have suggested that key information was being withheld, that someone, somewhere, knew more than they were saying, that perhaps crucial details had been buried, overlooked, or deliberately concealed. Every unsolved case carries this weight, but with Summerwells, it has always felt more intense. The silence of that hollow summer day in June 2021 has stretched on for far too long. But maybe, just maybe, that silence is cracking. Because with this raid, it feels as if investigators have finally put their finger on something real. The shadows that once hid this case are beginning to shift. The questions that haunted a family, a community, and an entire nation might now start to find their answers. And justice for Summerwells, may be closer than ever.